prazer abrir hoje o nosso quarto seminário do International Talks, esta série de eventos, webinários, né, virtuais, diálogos no âmbito da internacionalização, com o tema de hoje Internationalisation and Outreach. Eu sou Diana Daste, diretora de Educação do Conselho Britânico. Agradeço a todos e todas a participação e, claro, nossa parceria com a FAUBAI. Maria Leonor, boa tarde, os palestrantes. A Associação Conselho Britânico é a agência internacional do governo britânico, agência internacional britânica, que fomenta as parcerias, o desenvolvimento de capacidades, o diálogo internacional entre o Reino Unido e os países parceiros, nos âmbitos da educação, cultura, arte e sociedade. Dentro da nossa agenda de educação, temos um grande foco em potencializar capacidades, vínculos, parcerias e evidências de processos que funcionam para avançar em processos mais estratégicos. Esta a nossa agenda de internacionalização materializada nos International Talks é uma mostra de como a gente consegue conectar parceiros, como a gente consegue vincular instituições, visando o melhoramento das capacidades, dos diálogos e das estratégias de instituições brasileiras e britânicas. Agradeço a presença de todos, a parceria com a FAUBAI. O tema de hoje é muito importante porque é aquela aplicação dos processos de internacionalização, como que eles funcionam na prática, o que eles significam para os diferentes âmbitos nas instituições de educação e na sociedade. Também com grande satisfação que comemoro e dou as boas-vindas para os nossos palestrantes do Fundo Newton, né? Também uma iniciativa do governo britânico implementada pelo British Council, entre outros parceiros, que proporciona um pouco umas evidência de como que esses processos funcionam na prática e nos dão um amplo repertório para conversar e para continuar avançando nestas temáticas de internacionalização, alcance, estratégia e impacto. Eu vou passar a palavra para a Maria Leonor, comemorando mais uma vez a nossa parceria. O British Council está comemorando os seus 75 anos, né, no país, e estas ações são muito gratificantes, é uma honra conseguir lançar e fortalecer esse tipo de relações, né, que dão conta e que manifestam esse nosso trabalho no país e o trabalho das nossas instituições parceiras nesta agenda de internacionalização. Obrigada a todos os nossos palestrantes, a nossa moderação, e eu dou as boas-vindas, passo para a Maria Leonor da FAUBAI, presidente da FAUBAI.
Thanks, Diana. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, boa tarde, boa noite, bom dia. On behalf of FAUBAI Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you all to the webinar series of international talks, today focused on internationalization and outreach. As Diana have already mentioned, it's a collaboration between FAUBAI and the British Council. It's not the only collaboration, we have a lot. We are going to talk a little bit about it at the end of this webinar today. So I'm Maria Leonor Maia, I'm the president of FAUBAI, the Brazilian Association for International Education, which gathers 220 international officers from Brazilian universities, from public to private sector, and from all the 5 regions of Brazil. So our main goal is to advocate and to promote the internationalization of the higher education in Brazil. The issue today that we are going to discuss is about the internationalization and outreach. Although that we know that outreach is one of the 3 pillars for the Brazilian universities, together with teaching and research. So we knew a little about it. they are not so well recognized as the other two pillars of the organizations. And if we talk about internationalization, sometimes we even heard about it. So there are so many focus on teaching and research and innovation, but we know a little about outreach. So that's a huge opportunity together and today in this afternoon to learn about experience in the UK and in Brazil. And then start thinking about it and to put it on our agenda. So the outreach is a cultural and academic and scientific process that articulates not only teach and research, but rather the institution and the society. So the power of transformation that activities related to it can reach can be enormous, and they are very, very important. So I think that we also needed to consider that it's a component of the comprehensive internationalization if this is an approach that we work with. So we can not ignore, the aspects the outreach can bring to internationalization and vice versa. So for that, I would like to thank our speakers today, Elena Gaura from the University of Coventry, UK, Alessandro Trindade from the Universidade Federal do Amazonas in Brazil, Cristiana Mueller from the Universidade de Santa Cruz do Sul in Brazil. Also, Cristiana is also a member of FAUBAI Counselor, and also to Nicolas Maillard from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, who will moderate this important afternoon, this important session today. So I hope that we can have a wonderful and a spectacular conversation this afternoon, and that we can learn a lot. So Nicolas, it's up to you to conduct us to this, fascinating afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Maria Leonor. We are grateful for those welcome speeches from the Director of Education of British Council Brazil and of the President of FAUBAI. Today is the fourth webinar in the series called International Talks webinar, jointly promoted by British Council and FAUBAI. My name is Nicolas Maillard. I'm from Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Porto Alegre, and I here represent FAUBAI. This series of 4 webinars have started in October. Today, 16th of December, is the last one. There have already been quite a number of speakers from both British and Brazilian institutions. Today's topic is, as Noda was mentioning, internationalization and outreach. The audience will be able to ask questions. On the bottom right of your Zoom screen, you should locate a button called Q&A. So please use it to issue your questions, preferably in English, because some of our speakers are, of course, native English speakers and don't practice Portuguese. If it's not possible, ask in Portuguese and we'll translate. And for other information, not for the questions, but for other information or comments, please use the chats. We will do our best to moderate all the questions to the speakers at the end. If there are too many questions, we'll have to make some small selection, of course. We also invite everyone to answer at the end of the presentation. The brief evaluation, it will pop up, it will appear at the end of the webinar on your slide. It's a very simple 4 questions, multiple choice form. So very quick to answer, but it's important for us as organizers to be able to have some feedback of the interest on this webinar. So thank you in advance for taking a minute to answer this evaluation form at the end. And finally, last warning, those participants who would need a certificate, please signal it on the last question of the form. You will have some special check mark to manifest that you need some certificates. Now, for the introduction of our speakers, so we'll have in the following order speaking Cristiana Mueller, She's a coordinator of international relations at Universidade de Santa Cruz do Sul, UNESCO, in a beautiful state, which is Rio Grande do Sul. And she's also representative of the communitarian higher education institutions at the deliberative board of FAUBAI. Then we'll have the pleasure to listen to Miss Elena Gaura, Associate Dean of Research from the Faculty of Engineering, Environment and Computing at Coventry University in the UK, of course. And she'll be presenting jointly with Professor Alessandro Bezerra Trindade, who's adjunct professor from the Department of Electricity at Universidade Federal do Amazonas in Brazil, of course. At the end, after these talks and after the Q&A, we'll have a special participation from Maria Paula de Salvo. She's a founder of the company called Easy Telling, and she's going to discuss about the importance of communicating results to improve the impact of our research in our universities so that the society as a whole can really see what we do in the university. But first, let's start with Cristiana Mueller. Please, Cristiana, the floor is yours. You have roughly 20 minutes for your speech.
So I'm going to have like 1:15, yes, 6:04. Thank you, Nicolas, for the kind introduction. Thank you, everybody, British Council especially, and FAUBAI as well, for the invitation and also for the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the examples, the experiences we do here in at UNISC. So first of all, I would like to say that we were worried about the meaning of the word outreach in terms of Brazil, because normally we used to say and use the word extension. So that's why I would like to count on Carol to help me to pass the slides. Please, could you just pass for the next slide? Because I wanted to show, I know it's very long, but just to mention a kind of concept of extension. That is exactly what Maria Leonor had mentioned already. It's about the relation between the university and the society through different programs, projects, services, cultural activities, training, courses, events, etc. So it's a huge capacity to put inside the extension or the outreach the activities the universities can do in Brazil and to create important impact. And why not to increase also the international dimension. And this concept here, it's used at UNISC. And we used to say that it's also a way to increase in our students who are the main actors of this process and these activities, beside of the faculty members and the community in general. But it's a great opportunity to increase their citizenship skills and capacities in terms of create social impact and transformation. So outreach and extension is a word very known in Brazil, and it's important to say that we use it very, very strongly in a university as UNISC is. Which is this university, what kind of university we are. We have just mentioned here, for example, we have in Brazil two different kinds of universities, the public ones, the private ones, and also the communitarian. UNISC, it's a communitarian one. Why does it mean exactly? The community is inside the university and the university is inside the community through different actions and programs of extension outreach. So the communitary universities, they are common in Brazil. Most of them are in the south of Brazil, as our case, for example. We have very strong relations with the community. We are focused in the local and regional development. We are non-for-profit institutions. We are democratically managed, and all the process is very democratically. Any decisions, for example, we have in a very open and clear and important process. And this is exactly how UNISC acts, for example. So as we do not get, for example, funding from the Brazilian government, neither we are for-profit institutions. We are not the public, neither private. So I used to say that the communitarian university, they are directly linked to the outreach activities, the extension, as you used to mention in Brazil, but we also are in the middle of both institutions, normally known worldwide. So please, the next slide, please, Carol. And UNISC, it's not the only one. As I have already mentioned, we have 3 different associations, just to clarify the audience, that what means all the structure and the number of communitarian universities in Brazil. We have an association in terms of a federal level, that's a group. We have 68 associated institutions, communitarian universities. And we, in the south of Brazil, we have Confronting, which UNISC is part of it. It's a consortium of communitarian universities from our province of Rio Grande do Sul. And I totally agree, it's a great and beautiful province in Brazil. Just to mention, for example, to share with you some important numbers, it's, for example, only in 2019, we provided the 14 universities here from Confronting, Rio Grande do Sul, we provided more than 3 million services in terms of outreach and projects to the community. And normally all those activities and people who were benefited from these activities, it's for free. As well, ACAFE is also another association of communitarian university, but it's from the state of Rio Grande do Sul, and they also have a huge number, 1.2 million services and people who were attended with services provided in terms of outreach. So it gives a general overview about what means the action that the communitarian universities do and where we are located in Brazil. The next slide, please. And as I mentioned, UNISC is a communitarian. We have the same characteristics of a communitarian university as other ones. But why we are communitarian? We are located here in the south of Brazil. We have 5 campuses, and in countryside places are our campuses located. But why we are communitarian? It's because we were created by the community. People from our region, especially where we have our main campus, that is the city of Santa Cruz do Sul. It's located in the center from our province. They wanted to study, they wanted to improve the development of our region through higher education. So they focused in education plus social development as a way to develop both together. So that's why we are still work not just with the founders of our institution, but we still work very committed with the focus of what our community demands, what are their needs, and we believe, and this is in our mission, in our institutional mission, that higher education is a resource, an important resource for social development. And the next slide, because then all the information just mention you that we are a communitarian university. It means we have a lot of the same characteristics of other Brazilian communitarian universities. The next slide, please. And these are some important data. Unfortunately, it seems we're not able to see all the numbers, but I just wanted to emphasize, for example, right now, last year, I'm sorry. Last year, we had 64 programs and projects, outreach programs and projects that we called extension. And also in 2019, we had like more than 17,000 people were benefited from those projects in different fields of study, for example, education, healthcare, different services. And we also had more than 600 kind of services offered for free for the community, also in those activities according to the social demand. So these activities are normally used, for example, services that we offer in clinics, healthcare clinics, and juridical assistance, and so on. So it means that we are very focused, not just on research and teaching, but in outreach, in extension, as we used to say. We have a lot of projects, activities, and so on. But I had to choose some who were very linked with the international dimension. So I would like to share with you some examples. Could you change the slide, please? Those are some examples. The first one we've chosen, it's a program that was called English for Inclusion. It was a program managed totally by our international office. It was a 6-month project financed by the US mission in Brazil, especially the consulate in Porto Alegre. It was to offer English classes for high school students, and we had 60 students from public schools from our region, taking regularly and twice a week classes at in our campus. And those classes, they were taught by an English teacher from a partner university from US. So we offered a different way to learn with a native speaker, for example, teacher. But they didn't only learn English, but they gave us a lot of good feedbacks, the students especially, because they had the first time a contact with a foreign English teacher, and also they could see how the university could open their eyes for the world. So maybe they had never imagined before to have the contact with the English speaker teacher, but now they think to study a higher education institution, to study abroad, and so on. So the next slide, another example. The other example we have chosen, it's an extension project that we have here. That's a working group to support refugees and immigrants, because in our region we receive immigrants and refugees, and this is something that we also were very worried about, how to give them a better quality of life. So we created this program in 2016, and the international office was also linked to this program. And we are focusing much more in the immigrants and refugees in our region, where we have much more interactions. That means in the Rio Pardo Valley, for example, that's more in the central region of our province. And we also offer scholarships for students, for undergraduate students, to interact and to act in this program. They are focusing much more in helping, the immigrants and the foreigners in terms of giving legal assistance, how to, for example, to validate the diplomas, how to get a job, and so on. And on the right side, you can see a guy, a photo. He shared with us because he had a lot of problems to be with his kids again. And we help in terms of how to get funding to do his travel back to his country and to get in touch again with his kids. So it was for us a successful experience, for example. But this work still continues, and it's very active. And another example is on the next slide, please. This is also a very important project we have. It's to confronting domestic and family violence against women. We had recently an improvement of the number of places that we offer this kind of support for women that unfortunately it's a reality in our region, and with the pandemic it increased a lot, the domestic violence. So we get a financial support from the Czech Republic consulate in Brazil, and we had already 18 students of law. They're undergraduate students of law, because they have knowledge in terms of legal assistance and so on, because the project is focusing much more and to give support in legal assistance, and besides of giving a humanized care to the women who are in a very bad situation. And because most part of them, they have no information how to get support from the government or legally and so on. What are their rights? So the students in this project, it's much more focused how to empower by giving information, legal assistance, and information to help to find out a better situation for those women. And the next project, for the next slide, This is something we have it, and we are very proud of it. It's the International Language Study Trips. It's something because our language center, for example, offers as an extension program as well to study different languages. And this is a program that we offer for more than 20 years at UNISC, that we organize during the vacation, July, January, February, for example, different trips to study language. And so we have a list of countries. We have already sent groups of students, not only students, because when we offer this opportunity, it's for alumni, it's for faculty, for all general staff of the university, and also for recently, last year, we were planning to offer 3 trips, for example, for elderly people that we used to call 50+ age. And unfortunately, right now we are in standby in terms of these trips, but it is every year we organize it, and it's managed by the international office as well. Then the next experience we have, it's on the next slide. It is like the interaction in terms of culture. This is in partnership with the Canadian University, University of Edmonton. We already developed 2 different activities with them. One of those was in 2014, another last year. When 2014, we received the concert. It was amazing, a concert from their chore. And we had 30 Canadian members in this chore, and we had a huge audience of more than 800 people here at UNISC. And another activity, it was developed last year when we received the conductor of the Concordia chore as well. She did, for example, a vocal technique workshop open and for free for the community. And it was very interesting because we had excellent feedbacks on it. And all this was also managed by the International Office in partnership with our cultural center. And another project, this is not that new, but I'm alumni of it. And it's the Rondon project, and with Canada Working Youth, it's an NGO. We offered this program in 2005 to 2008. And it was focused by doing through different projects, social programs and projects from the community, from a Canadian and a Brazilian community, for students from our university and Canadian students. They were focusing in developing, not just to helping those programs to develop them and to create a better impact in the society, but also to develop intercultural abilities and social responsibility, leadership, sustainability, and so on. So it was like a very, very important, because we still have contact with the students. We had for the 4 years, the total 72 students attending this program, and we still have contact with them, and they have like still in their core activities, the social impact. And with those activities, I would like to ask for the next slide, please. I think the outreach or extension activities we develop, and we have much more, but we have no time today to share with you. We have a lot of challenges. So we face a lot of difficulties and maybe opportunities as well. One of them is funding, how to get funding for internationalization and also for extension or outreach programs. I am sure that the colleagues, they're going to talk a little bit how it works in terms of how to get the funding from British Council, for example. And how another challenge is how to validate, how to get recognitions of those extension activities in the curricular, for example, structure of for our students. How to interact locally and internationally, how to create similar collaborations with also communitarian or at least universities or associations with the same goals, and how to have a balance, for example, in terms of all those activities in incoming, outgoing students and staff and so on. And maybe also how to think and how to create virtually activities and experience because of our current period. But the next slide tells me that we are on the right way. I think so. I'm very proud of making part and working for a community university because we see the impact in the society. And taking in mind the concept of Hans de Witt about internationalization, I think the most important of this concept is to create through internationalization contribution to the society. And by these examples, for example, I've very briefly mentioned, I'm sure that we did it. And we still are working and thinking in new possibilities to continue with. And the next slide, I'm finishing. It's just to give you our general contact and to say that I'm in the international office as coordinator, but I'm not working together alone. So I have my team here who works and helps me near to 24 hours a day. And we try to create new possibilities, and this is the good thing. But the next slide, it's so if our photos are not that attractive, I would like to finish my minutes with you by showing you some photos about the cultural aspects from our city of Santa Cruz do Sul, because as a community university and working to develop the community, we are very proud about the culture we have there. I mean here. So thank you again for your time, for the opportunity, and I hope this very short presentation could also help everyone to think differently. And I'm sure all the community universities in Brazil have excellent examples to show. So hope to see you soon in Brazil, in Rio Grande do Sul, in Santa Cruz do Sul, or in some place in the world. Thank you. I forgot. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. So the next speaker will be then Dr. Elena Gaura from UK. So please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Nicolas, and thank you, Cristiana. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I hope some of the friends that I have in Brazil, a most wonderful country, are on the call and here to support me and remember the good times that we've had working together over the past few years. I have been asked to say a few words together with my colleague and work partner in the STAR project, Alessandro, who is going to follow. That's just in case I forget to introduce him after my few minutes of the talk, so I better do it now. STAR, Sustainable and Replicable Off-Grid Renewable Energy System for Riverside Communities in the Amazon, Brazil, has been a project that has captured the imaginations of many, and certainly my heart, absolutely and through. And it's a project that continues to live beyond the end date, which was probably about a year and a half ago now. And you are going to hear more from Alexandra on how exactly we've kept this project alive, although the funding has finished. So STAR, a project financed by the British Council for the period 2017 and 2019, a 2-year collaboration between Coventry University and UFAM, together with FAS and Schneider as sponsors and supporters on the what we call impact side, our impact partners. And we'll come to say a few more words about what we mean exactly by impact following our first distinguished speaker. So about the project, we were partners actually without previous contact, really joined by our desire to work with communities and work in the energy sector, and seeing a need, a space, and a scope for research in renewable systems design. Also bringing together computer scientists, engineers, and those on the ground to do some good stuff, stuff that hasn't been done before. And that's what research is all about, really. we actually set the roots for this at a previously funded a British Council project, which was a Newton Fund networking event, 2016 in Florianopolis, Brazil. Another superb collaboration that actually brought together 25 scientists from the UK with 25 scientists from Brazil. And over the past 4 years, we've seen out of that 1 week event, intense event, we've seen over a dozen collaborations, international collaborations being funded in various programs and taking a lot of various shapes. So a very successful program that also led to us working together in the STAR package with Amazonas State. We wrote the project proposal in 2017. I think we've got an error there on the slide. And we've got a mere £60,000 with anyone that has worked in renewables and energy before will know that doesn't stretch very much at all. And anyone knowing the costs in UK and Brazil higher education will also know it doesn't stretch much at all. So I always call STAR a shoestring project. So the execution was from April 2017 to March 2019. We had very simple and very straightforward aims. We wanted to design, pilot, and monitor a renewable energy solution for communities in the Amazon. We wanted to also do a lot of capacity building, learning from working together on how to work better in our own universities, in our own countries in the future, and also maybe to put the seeds down for renewables energy training in Brazil and also in the UK, given that renewable technologies are really a mix of specialists, a mix of expertise, and require a little bit more than straightforward specialism training. And overall, I think the Newton Fund aimed through the ODA programs to enhance the quality of education, bring about international standards in all of the countries participating in the program. What we achieved on this shoestring project within 2 years was absolutely amazing, and that just speaks to the dedication of the Brazilian team and Alessandro in particular on his strength in bringing the troops together, running the program, and really making the absolute most of every little bit of funding that we have and every opportunity that was offered in the program, and also during the program's lifetime working to gain his own PhD, which has been an amazing achievement, coinciding nearly to the end of STAR. We wrote together, we worked together, we worked with communities, and we built systems together in field, which is much more than most projects of this duration and this funding would afford one to do. Next, my job, next slide. My job today is really to take you through maybe what are the most important characteristics of establishing good international partnerships, and then comment a little bit on outreach, capability building, and impact. It comes from the understanding that we use the same words, but maybe use different meanings. But when it comes to it, any project should have all of these aims of outreach, capability building, and impact, regardless of the language or the culture we are referring to them from. And that's going to be clear in the next few slides. Next. So I would urge anyone that wants to take an interest on the STAR project, on the story of STAR, on how we've done it, when we've done it, and what we've built together between Coventry University and UFAM, and they should visit the website on top of this slide. We've taken the trouble, myself and Alessandro, to put a record of the project for those who want to maybe learn from it, who maybe want to compare their own experiences with it. And I welcome anyone that has thoughts about our journey and our story to write to myself and Alessandro, and maybe try to understand the differences and commonalities between various international projects in this sphere. Next. I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes to say that, in my opinion, what makes a successful international scientific partnership, reflecting on the few I've had across the world, and especially a few that I had in Brazil with colleagues, and 3 very different, very specific projects in the last 4 years or 5 years, I would say that first and foremost, researchers need to have an opportunity. And those opportunities are generally created by sponsors. So I welcome British Council to set up more opportunities for the UK and British researchers to get together, because look what an amazing job we are doing with very little funding. So opportunity is very important. People get a focus, they get creative, they get hands-on, and they get really, really together, working together very intensely over short periods of time, when there are calls out there, when there is an opportunity for them to realize joint dreams, if they can join them together, if they can join those interests together. And that brings me to the second bullet point, which is interest. I don't think there is anywhere in the world a successful international collaboration if the interests of the parties are not aligned. There's got to be a spirit that brings them together. They need to want to do good together in a particular area and have complementary skills and expertise to realize those scientific dreams together. The next one is curiosity, because I'm going to say working across cultures is a very difficult thing and is not for everyone. So you need to be curious to understand how people from a different culture think, how they create, how they bring about science, how they think about the world. Otherwise, you take opportunities and you join interests in calls that are national calls with peers across the down the road, a few miles down the road, in your own culture, your own country, and in your own language. So people need to be curious about working cross-culturally if they are to build successful partnerships. The funding needs to be adequate. It is no point having all of those 3 things before if you haven't found a stream of funding that actually caters for accomplishing the interests that you have found together with your partners. The next one is a little bit softer value, a softer characteristic in my books is that of values. I think we are people before being scientists. And if we don't share the values of trustworthiness, of hardworkiness, of openness, and all of the other human values that come with being similar and working together in sync, without that, I don't think we can build strong partnerships, because all of the rest of the things that have to do with the language gap and the cultural gap would come in the way. And last but not least, I think both partners or the multiple partners that come into a scientific partnership really, really need to want to make impact. Without impact, an impactless project don't have a chance to survive as international projects. It is too hard to run international projects if you don't strive to have the reward that making an impact brings to you as a researcher. So in other words, it's absolutely worthless to do international science if you don't aim and want impact from that joint science. Next. I hope I convinced you that while it is not hard, it is desirable, it's great, it feels great, and it brings like minds together. And to just look a little bit at some of the gaps that I was talking about. The cultural and the language gap are really very well reflected in the meaning that we put to the words outreach, capacity building, and impact. In the UK, the well understood meaning of outreach is that of inspiring, championing, and infusing a younger generation to uptake study in a particular area of science and development. So for example, we do a lot of outreach with school children in order to get them to love STEM, to come into engineering education, to bring females into engineering education, to come and join the scientific army that we are building in the UK. We use capacity building to mean preparing, training, upskilling, and enhancing the readiness of people that are already performing in the sciences. They are already scientists, they are already training to be researchers, they are already there, but they just need more support to increase the critical mass or deepen their skills. And we use impact to measure the effect that we have as scientists with our science on the society, the economy, the public, and the services in a measurable way. So listening to the previous talk, I already figured that we have a language gap, we have a terminology gap, but in the end, both myself and our esteemed speaker before meant the same thing. A university and research should do all of these things in this slide in no particular order, with any opportunity and funding that they find available, either from within the spirit of the university or from within the spirit of the funders that we go and ask for money to support our activities too. I dare say that within the STAR project, we've done an awful lot of capacity building and produced an awful lot of impact, which is what Alessandro is going to be speaking about. We didn't do much outreach, but we did nevertheless engage in the Brazilian sense of outreach with a lot of undergraduates, and the numbers are really, really impressive and they are growing. Next slide. I am going to leave you with some testimonials as to impact, and that's not to steal the thunder under Alessandro's wings, but just to say that we worked so close with the communities that we really treasure the words that they had to say in answer to some questions we took the liberty of asking them 1 year after we've implemented energy systems in one of the 16 communities that we worked with within the project. And it's very interesting to see here, if you read the words on the slide, that the impact chain that we started in this project generates, without intervention, more impact. We've started a trend, we started a fashion, we started a need to use renewable technologies, and we show that it is possible to deploy them, to have them in the Amazonas, in the back of nowhere. And those people who have benefited are now saying, we are your champions. You don't need to work on impact anymore. We will be championing these technologies and these systems for you. And to my book, this is the real definition of impact. When you start the spark, and others that you brought along during your journey will take that spark and make it into real fires, and many of them. And I know I have more slides, but I'm going to stop here and give time to my dear partner, Alessandro, to continue on impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, for preparing the way. This is Alessandro. I'm speaking from Manaus. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, the second part of the presentation will be focused in the impact and about development. It was possible with the project itself and the fruitful links after the project. Next one. I will talk about the impact to my university, Federal University of Amazonas, and to the community. The community, by the way, it's an indigenous community. It's far from Manaus, around 2 hours in the speedboat. and who knows, or regions knows that there is no roads. Mainly you use the rivers, so there is a huge logistic effort and the maintenance of the systems or equipment in the communities. Without telecommunications, infrastructure, and it's so hard. So, but think back to the university, my university, we know that if you build international partnerships, these improve our score as undergraduate course in Brazil. So it's very important to do that kind of project. During the project, we had 2 workshops and a lot of courses in Manaus with UK experts from Coventry University and its scene about IoT, data science, RStudio, basic energy finance modeling. It was developed a monitoring system in order to study the behavior of the load curve, the energy generated and consumed by each house. It was developed by Coventry using Raspberry Pi. So we had a basic training about deployment and basic programming. And the final workshop, you had the representative from the Environment Secretary of our state, the Amazon state, the power distribution company, the British Council itself, the Schneider Electric as partner, the NGO, it was partner as well, open to the public with presentation of the results. We had as well 3 undergraduate scholarships and 1 PhD scholarship. And in total, you used 8 undergraduate students in order to help during the project. We had until now 2 papers published. One in a congress in Brazil and one in the high impact international journal. It's very good. The photovoltaic system design and then the implementation, what was used to validate a tool that I created during my PhD in computer science. I am an electrical engineer. My master's degree is electrical engineering, but my PhD is in computer science. And the project ended in 2019, as I told before. And as outreach or extensão in Portuguese, we continued visiting with more students, undergraduate students, in order to discover how it's a riverside community, the difficulties, the solution, and training the people. So it's very important. Next one. To the community itself, it's called Nova Esperança in the river Cueiras. We had 6 houses electrified, and using the Raspberry Pi solution, we collected data from each house to study the behavior. And it was interesting. Some of our research was done with that data. With interviews, we discovered that they got a better living, they bought more fun it's hot here, and refrigerator. So they have 24 hours, 7 days a week of energy availability. It's amazing to them. Some of the houses, after 13 months, they tripled the amount of electricity demand. And one house, the dealer decided to buy a washing machine, for example. And in 50% of the houses, 3 of the houses had an increase of the income. This indigenous community, they work with handmade material, crafts, so they had more time to produce. And beside that, they produce some frozen items. It was said in previous slide, using iced fruit with milk to drink it. And the household were trained in energy efficiency, how to save energy. You created a booklet and trained each dweller and in some basic issues related to the solar systems. Next, please. The academic outcomes, the papers itself, we are now, even after the finish of the project, we are writing a new one paper. Because of the Newton Fund, the British Council support and the networking. In your case, the UFA, we had new projects with all the partners, with the NGO, FAS, and with new partners as well, the University of Sheffield and London School of Economics, both from UK. We have an invitation. I expect that Elena maintains the invitation about a sabbatical year in Coventry University, and probably, I suppose, two new projects between us, my university, and Coventry University. Perfect. Next one. Our contacts here. It's back to you, Nicolas. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the three speakers for all those very thought-provoking experiences which have been reported. I would like to open the floor to any question that would be sent through the Q&A section. And while the questions are coming, let me start the first round of comments or questions. I will have one short direct questions to Coventry and Amazonas, and another separate one for Cristiana. The first one would be relative to the Newton funds. Are you, and it's also for the British Council, maybe they can help with this question. Are you aware of any new calls or future possibilities to develop such projects? And another technical question, as far as I remember, there used to be some necessity of a Brazilian counterpart to the Newton funds. Was it the case in your project, or was it 100% funded by the British Council? And
I'm going to take, yeah.
Yes, please.
I'm going to take this one to say, I really look forward to the response from the British Council. I am not aware of any opportunity that we can take right now. I wish there was one. I hope there will be one. I have been conversing with a number of colleagues from the British Council Brazil. There are a lot of discussions, or there were at least before the pandemic, particularly about women in science in Brazil and maybe other aspects of science and technology. But I hope somebody is going to give us some good news today, maybe. The other part of the question on the funding, I'm going to say that that the funding was based on the Brazilian side stepping in and co-funding a number of things. And while that has been difficult, it has eventually been real. I think things were not straightforward, and when we debriefed all our sponsors at the end of the project, I think we've pointed out quite clearly that better arrangements needed to be in place before we started the project on the co-funding side, which has taken absolutely forever, and Alessandro had to pay the price for that all by himself. Really, but the co-funding was in the shape of studentships. So actually, it went towards the outreach and the capability building area, and in the end was very comprehensive, really comprehensive. We could not have deployed this project without the Brazilian side of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. I think maybe Vera from the British Council. Yes, please, Alessandro, and then Vera, I think, from British Council may have some complementary explanations.
Okay, and we had a lot of in-kind of the partners, the commitment from the partners, and Schneider Electric, even after the finish of the project, they donated charge controllers and inverters, and FAS, the NGO, donate batteries and the solar panels. So you deployed 2 more houses. At the beginning, it was planned 4 houses, and we reached 6 in total with this co-funding and doing even after the project. We had the commitment to continue the deployment, to the visiting, and share with Coventry all the data and continue the research.
So that's a very impressive outcome, because it means that you also, through this internationalization project, you also succeeded in bringing in private companies to co-fund. So it's by all possible standards, I know it's a perfect result.
It was a lot of hard work, though. I don't think we should say that this is the standard of what should be achieved or should be expected from £60,000 from the British Council. By no means. I think my time on the project was something like 2% of my full-time job, and Alessandro's was the same. And I'm going to say that for the best part of 2 years, we both worked more than half of our time consistently on this project through the grace and benevolence of our own institutions that believed in us and believed in the purpose for the project and the good that it was about to do. And FAS have been absolutely remarkable. Without the facilities that they've put to us, without the boats, without the operations, without the insight and the know-how in working with communities, we wouldn't have been able to make head or tail of the project, because we are not experts in community liaison. They are. So I'm going to say we had absolutely the right ingredients, the right people, and I think we just took the imagination of many people that had something to give. But that does not happen with every project, doesn't happen with every project I am involved with, and I don't think it happens in every project Alessandro is involved with, or anyone in the audience. So I think STAR was one of a kind, and maybe that's why it's good to talk about it.
Thank you. Vera, maybe you have some comments to make?
Yes, thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Professor Elena, Professor Alessandro. I'm always happy to hear about this project, because it was a beautiful project in all levels. And as mentioned, it was a very good example as well of how match fund can work. So Newton Fund, we always work with match funds, so it's always 50-50. British Council put £60,000, but Brazil, through the partnerships and in-kind contributions as well, put another £60,000. So it was even more. It was a beautiful project. For Newton Fund, right now, we don't have any new projects opening under British Council. There are some calls open with research councils, but very little, because we're still waiting to see more about what's going to happen with Newton Fund. Because it's been running since 2014, so it was expected that it was going to be through a transition. But at the same time, we will have several interesting initiatives coming up, including on women in science and internationalization of higher education, that I can talk a little bit more during the closing of this panel. So just to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Now, Cristiana, I was wondering also, you mentioned as one of the challenges the question of the evaluation or the impact of those extension projects. We've seen in Amazonas an example of a project which clearly by all means has impact, whatever the mix, I think we could identify this. Of course, there was a very direct, concrete outcome, which was the access to lights in some households. But the project you mentioned as well, you could clearly see a huge impact in many of them. I remember the one with the Czech Republic, 777 women supported. It's a huge impact. I'm sure you're supporting project for refugees also. Probably you have helped tens, maybe hundreds of people. So I'd like to have your ideas about this question of the impact. In my university, we have the same situation. As soon as we talk about outreach, instead of reaching out to 20 or 25 students, we reach out to hundreds of people. But on the other hand, those figures sometimes don't convince our communities. It seems they're not considered, even if they're much higher than say the number of credits that the student studies abroad. So do you have any way in your university to give some more value to these outreach projects? Do the academics who are involved in those projects, what do they win in the end? Maybe in the evaluation process, maybe they have access to some extra resources. How do you deal with this at UNISC?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. First of all, I just would like to apologize because I totally forgot to introduce Professor Elena before. I'm really sorry about it. I was just worried about the time I had, so I'm really sorry about it. But I think in terms of your questions, yes, I mean the how to measure the impact. It's because normally we used to use numbers. It means a quantitative evaluation and not a qualitative evaluation. And I think your question about how we manage with this, if we use, for example, the results, or how can we, for example, to make a greater impact in terms of inside and outside the institution with all those projects. I think the problem is right now as we face, it's, for example, to the community since the 60s, when we were created, all the activities we do, it's for them, it's our responsibility, only this. We're not doing much more than they supposed to expect from us. I think this is the limit in terms of they do not qualify that much as we think it could be done by the community in all those projects. We help them, we interact with them, and we also learn from them. So this is one point. I think the impact in terms of how are the impacts perceived by the community. And inside the university, I can mention that probably as we have not national regulation in terms of how to use those activities, those extension activities, and even hours that our faculty members dedicate for extension projects, they have not the same. I can say it's not equal for those faculty who are interactive and active in terms of research. It's in balance. It's not equal, I think. And I think that's why we at the university, we used to be positive, optimists. We continue creating new possibilities to show to the community that this is our main goal as a communitarian university. And I used to say, this is my own opinion, it's not our rector, for example, opinion, but during the pandemic, the number of new projects and activities we have developed just to support the community. It was like, I used to say, we are much more communitarian than we have ever been before, because, you know, we felt like we have to support the community in terms of economy, in terms of information, in terms of creating soap, to doing the COVID tests, and, you know, in every area we have a lot of new activities. But the recognition from the community, it's not in the same level, I think, because we are right now in a national and a local scenario that we have for-profit institutions, and we are in a competition with them in terms how to show what is our responsibility and what are the others institutions' responsibility, because they are not focusing in an extension, for example. They will students and that's it, and get profit for the students' fees payments, for example. I think this is a big problem in a national level, how to measure qualitatively inside the institution, but through a national recognition of those kind of activities, I'm sorry. But I think we are doing a first step. CAPES, who is the national agency to do the recognition and validation of master and PhD programs, they created recently a new kind of evaluation process, and they are asking, for example, for those kind of extension or other kinds of actions and impacts that we could add, for example, those kind of activities that the PhD or master's degree students are involved in. And we had never this before in our history in higher education in Brazil. So I think it's a huge and important first step to change it, because what is the university reason? It's to help to develop the country. And I think this is what we do in a very small way, but I think we have to reinforce in a national or international, I think, way to make sure that people will understand that university is, you know, partner to the development of a better world for everyone.
Right, thank you. Yeah, you're right to mention CAPES new evaluation criteria. I think based on the history in Brazil of CAPES, potentially this will lead to huge changes in terms of mindsets regarding what the universities do. Okay, well, thank you. It's time to move on to one more presentation. Maria Paula de Salvo, and I think Cristiana has made a great transition because Mariana Paula is going to talk about communication, about our research. So, so maybe she'll certainly be able to help us improving on this point. Maria Paula, please.
Many thanks, Nicolas. Hi, everyone. Many thanks for inviting me for this webinar. Special thanks to FAUBAI and British Council in the name of Vera. And I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Just a second. We have a presentation. So I would like to start my presentation by asking you all a question. Do you know how many studies in health science end up being published only in papers? I mean, only in papers. This means that they don't reach other audiences other than the academy audiences. Do you have any idea on that? So I present some data for you. Only 85% of all the health studies developed in the world end up only in the papers. This means that they don't reach other audiences because they remain in the papers, which is really complicated because it means that we are not generating the impact that they could generate if the results would be shared. So this same study from the Lancet, this was a study made by Lancet, the British news journal. And in 2009, I can share with you the reference. In the same study, they measured the amount of funding which is wasted because these studies, usually the results don't get to the other audiences, and hence they return little benefit or impact to society. So the amount that they reach in this study was like huge and was astonishing as well. The waste in terms of dollars was equivalent at the GDP of this beautiful country here. We are talking about 200, we are talking about $200 billion, which is the equivalent of New Zealand GDP, which is wasted in terms of funding because the results don't get to the other audiences and they are not generating like not new technologies, new products, you know, they are not like reaching impact. So why does this happen? Why everything's happening like this? Because usually there is a lack of communication between researchers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. And on the other hand, on the other side of this huge gap here, we have policymakers, decision makers, funders, and private sector like companies. Alessandro mentioned the example of the company that was like supporting the project. So usually these results, they don't get. There is a huge gap between these two parts that should be bridged. Through communication, because the communication, they don't speak the same language, they don't communicate the results in a time that decision makers and the policy makers are producing, are needing these results, are producing laws or are producing new bills to have this evidence to base all these bills. So this means that we are not communicating well, we are not generating the impact that all the research could have if they were well communicated. So there are many ways to solve that. There is like one approach that is called knowledge translation, which is used like by Canada, by US, I mean, some other countries like Australia, which means that we have to what is knowledge translation? To transmit, to communicate and share the results to whom can make an impact with them. So in my company, the Easy Telling, the company I founded, we try to use this approach based on knowledge translation in 6 steps to help researchers to communicate. They are like, we try to come up with only 6 to make it easier for any researcher in any field, in any area, to communicate easily with like many different audiences that can generate impact. So what we do basically is to translate, simplify technical and scientific content in any field into an easily understandable language to motivate these target audiences. We can be like a policymaker or I don't know, a private sector, to make a decision, whether investing, for instance, in a project or like keeping the investment in a scientific project, formulating evidence-based public policies, purchasing a product. I mean, it depends on the goal of the communication. So right now we have some clients like the Newton Fund and the British Council. We are doing like a great project with them on training the researchers funded by the Newton Fund and the British Council on how to communicate their results in a better way, and also like how to train them to be like a kind of filmmakers, video producers, which is really important these days, because usually the funders are requiring and requesting even more different types of outreach materials like policy briefs, videos, and many others, fact sheets, for instance. So I brought, in order to simplify and to give some examples, I brought an example here. So here we have like a paper on, just a second, just a second. I have a video to show. Just a second, because the video was, sorry, I have to reopen the presentation because something went wrong here. Just a second. If we have time, we can show the video, but I just want to show you the before. So here we have like a paper on randomized control trial on the use of pessary plus progesterone. It's a healthy study. So it means it's really technical, really abstract, like it's like, I don't know, 30 pages, 40 pages length, which is really, really hard for the policymakers to read, to have time, to understand the technical terms. So in order to motivate them to read and make the results even more accessible to them, we create a video. If we have time, we can show you the video because there are like English subtitles here, highlighting that the surface exchanges can cause 65% of all spontaneous preterm births in Brazil. And this silicone ring, which was like the object of the study, could prevent the most extreme preterm births. And then we could save, for instance, public money. We can return this money invested to the society. So the video basically highlights all these cost and benefits arguments. We also created a website with the video inside and a small fact sheet for the policymakers and the decision makers to understand in just like a few pages what the project is. As I said before, we are also working with the British Council and the Newton Fund to create these one-pagers to summarize all the main results, the main impact, the legacy of each one of the projects so far, when it happened, what it is. This one is an example from the Alessandro Trindade project. But we've been working, besides Alessandro, with all the projects and the researchers who were funded by the British Council and the Newton Fund. We've been providing trainings to them as well on knowledge translation, communication of results, and video making in order to allow them to produce their own videos with their own cell phones to publicize and to share the results with different audiences. So just to finish, I have a little time to present everything. Some results. Because we were able to communicate the results to policymakers, because they were able to understand the importance of projects that could have a huge impact to the health sector, for instance, we were able to secure the continuity of funding in a specific project with the Ministry of Health in Brazil, because the policymakers could understand the importance to keep funding this project, which is really important for funders as well. We trained so far 105 researchers to communicate their studies better. And we are increasing, thankful, the readership and the reading rates of technical and very scientific reports by transforming them in one page, one fact sheet, one infographic, and to help the other audiences to understand science and generate the impact that we hope with science. This is my short presentation. If we have time, I can present the video that we created. If not, I'm open to answer questions. Thank you so much. And sorry for the technical problem with the video.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Maria Paula. We are slightly short of time, so I'm afraid we won't have much time for the video. But what I wanted to insert here is that we've received a question while you were speaking from André Luis Maillard. He was asking regarding using extension or outreach as a marketing tool and how to do this. And I think your presentation actually, even if it was targeted toward research, gave some very practical examples. What you're doing with the Newton Fund of issuing one-pages summaries of the most impactful outcomes. I think that this kind of technique can be used as an answer to André Luis Maillard. So I think we are now arriving at the end of this session and also at the end of this series of 4 webinars. So to conclude, I'd like to thank once again all the speakers of today, and I'd like to ask Mrs. Maria Leonor Maia and Vera Oliveira to come back on stage to present their final considerations and close this series of seminars. Vera, I think you can stop. You can start, please.
Thank you, Nicolas. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for the session. So thank you, Cristiana, Alessandro, Elena, Maria Paula. Thank you, Nicolas, for the moderation. It's been a real pleasure to have these sessions with FAUBAI. I remember earlier in the year, which seems like a long time ago, but it was probably 3 months or 4 months ago, we discussed that it would be interesting to have this series of webinars to discuss key issues, key themes around internationalization, and bring this with the context that FAUBAI was already doing the Wednesdays. So it was, we were really happy to have this partnership with FAUBAI. FAUBAI and British Council, we go back a long time, and we've had the EMI guide, and we are developing also the baseline study around internationalization. So for us, it was really good to have this chance to develop this series of webinars with FAUBAI, especially in this time, so we can discuss key things. So how we can talk about impact and quality indicators of internationalization, what discussion brings, how we can make processes that can make it easier, both in terms of how we can either or work with administrative staff at the universities to make internationalization an easier process, or work with students through e-learning, the whole thing around language policy and internationalization, how we can start connecting more the subjects. And last but not least, how we can talk about extension, outreach, and internationalization. So for us, it was really good to listen about different projects going on and how we can communicate those impacts to policymakers to help decisions to be made based on scientific evidence, which is something even more important than ever. So we are really happy to have had this chance and to have the audience coming back with us and participating. It was really a fruitful project. And as it was mentioned before, this is not the end of the work. We have lots of things planned for next year. So as British Council, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, but For those who had the chance to watch it, on Monday, we announced with the Ministry of Education and FAUBAI, there will be a new call for internationalization projects, a partnership between British Council, CONFAP, and Ministry of Education, Secretariat of Higher Education. So this call will be open from the second or from the third week of January, most likely. So, and the submissions will be through the British Council website. So this will be, I think, a good opportunity for university to once again partner UK and Brazilian university partner under internationalization strategies. We want this to reach an even larger audience than the last calls we had under British Council. We have the plans together with FAUBAI for the study that Professor Maillard probably mentioned, and that we're really happy to continue this partnership. And under Women in Science, there will also be some interesting opportunities that we will be launching in March 2021, looking especially at outreach for girls in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So for those institutions that have projects connected to outreach, working with public schools, with STEM, there will be a call later in March next year to support this project. Small funding, but for outreach, sometimes a little bit can help. So those are some of the ideas we have for next year. We've been very happy with all the speakers, all the moderators that have given their time to work with us in this series. And once again, I'd like to thank Professor Maria Leonor for the amazing partnership that we have. Thank you for all the work you've been doing together. Thank you, Professor René, as well, who's been also our champion in all of this. And to thank all the team that have been working for this. And thank you, Nicolas, for this session.
You're welcome. Thank you. Presidenta.
Wow, I think that I'm going to speak in Portuguese because we need to speak, you know, from the bottom of our heart. But anyway, yeah, I think that the words that we have to say is thanks to everybody. But before that, I think that I have to tell a short little, you know, story about not only the relationship between FAUBAI and British Council, but about the webinar series that was launched and promoted by FAUBAI. So this year context invited all of us to think internationalization through new lens or through new perspectives, or even from home, right? Majority of us are working from home. So in this weird environment, FAUBAI decided to be closer to its members and partners, sharing new experience, debating emergent topics, thinking about the future of higher education internationalization. At the beginning, it was a chaos. Everybody was thinking, so what about ourselves, you know? So what to do next? What will be the tomorrow? We even know that tomorrow started today. So, and it will depend on the actions that you are doing today. So we decided to be closer to our members. And that's why the webinar series was born. So we knocked the door of our partners and of our members through 13 afternoons since May up to now. So today we end up the 2020 webinar series, knocking your door at least once a month. Yeah, it's more than once a month because we start in May, you know, but at least once a month we're there. Hello, can we talk about this? You know, trying to be closer and try to be connected. And it's how can I say, it's a pleasure to end up this webinar series discussing about the outreach perspectives on internationalization. So among these 13 webinars, so part of it were in the what we call the Wednesdays webinars, and 4 of it we were together with the British Council. We designed together, you know, a series of the last 4 webinars that we have since September, I don't remember, this year. So the long-lasting partnership with the British Council is built up upon mutual respect and trust on the partner's core values. And these core values has a close relations with education as an opportunity to all. Education and diversity should approach diversity. Education should be responsible and responsive, socially responsive. So these are some of the values that we share with the British Council and make the contribution that we've been working for quite a long time in other projects like the EMI guidelines, which is available in our website and also at the British Council website. We've been in many seminars and workshops, drawing calls, sharing experience, sharing best practice, make the connection between the UK and Brazil stronger. Even in this context that we've been working from home, but we are working from hope. That's probably the main message. We are working from hope. So besides this webinar series, we are working on projects about quality assessment with the British Council that we hope that we can launch it in our next virtual conference in 2021, which will be on end of April. And please save the date. So I'd like, during the whole year, I'd like to thank all the speakers which were with us in the international talks and also in the Wednesday webinars from UK and from Brazil and from the US, from and Canada, from South Africa, to all moderators who were with us, available, to share, and to moderate, share ideas and moderate the talk, to our backstage, Carol, and the FAUBAI team who makes this possible, and especially to Rene and Vera and the British Council team, Simone as well, who together with Rene make these Wednesdays possible. So all the backstage as well, the concept and the hands-on, who invited, who we invited, when is it, how you do it. So there are lots of work behind that we need to mention. So to all our audience, to all people who decided that we knocked at the door, opened the door and said, okay, you'll be there. Our thanks, our special thanks, especially to be with us during this year, and also to our partners who were together with us, providing new thoughts on the field of internationalization of higher education. Please save the date, last week of April 2021, to participate in our virtual conference. Please take the opportunity to invite our website and to follow our media. There we are, sharing all the opportunities. As Elena mentioned, opportunity is one of the keys, to make connections. So all the opportunities are there. And I wish you all, how can I say, a new year full of hope and full of good energy. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you very much, Nona, for these kind words and these merry wishes. I just have a very final technical comments to make. First, I'd like to renew the special thanks to Carolina Martoni from Universidade do Norte do Paraná, who's on screen right now. Really, if it weren't for our work, this webinar and the other wouldn't have been possible. So thank you very much for all this work. Today, we've had up to 64 participants during this webinar. So it's quite successful given that we are now at the end of the year. Please let us know your feedback on this webinar. There's a short form that will appear on your screen. It's very simple to fill in, but please do it. It's very helpful for us to know how we should evolve in the months to come regarding this kind of webinars. Those who need a certificate, you please write it down at the end of the poll. There will be a special mark where you can check if you need some certificate. They will be available on the website of the FAUBAI in the coming days. The record of this video also will be available on YouTube. Through the FAUBAI website, you'll be able to access the link in a few days. Thank you again for attending this webinar, and see you some other time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Happy New Year.
See you too.
Bye.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.